Hi everybody. Today I have another book for you that deals with more mature topics. This one's on some racial discrimination. And if you didn't watch Steamboat School, I learned a lot with that one. That was a really good one. But this one's called These Hands. And it's written by Margaret Mason and illustrated by Floyd Cooper. So again, if you don't think your child is ready for this book, then I would say go on to another one because there's plenty of books for toddlers and elementary age kids, and this is for maybe older elementary or whatever you think is best for your child. Look at these hands, Joseph. Did you know these hands used to tie a triple bowline knot in 3 seconds flat? Well, I can still help a young fellow learn to tie his shoes. Yes, I can. Look at these hands, Joseph. Did you know these hands used to make the ivory sing like a sparrow in springtime? Well, I can still show a young fellow how to play heart and soul. Yes, I can. And the ivories is another word for the keys on a piano, or playing the piano. Look at these hands, Joseph. Did you know these hands used to pluck the ace of spades right out of thin air? Well, I can still teach a young fellow how to do a waterfall shuffle. Yes, I can. Well, I would like him to show me because I cannot do that. I make a big mess of cards all over the floor. Look at these hands, Joseph. Did you know these hands used to throw a curveball faster than a dive-bombing honeybee? Well, I can still help a young fellow learn how to hit a line drive. Yes, I can. Look at these hands, Joseph. Did you know these hands were not allowed to mix the bread dough in the Wonder Bread Factory? Did you know these hands were not allowed to touch the bread dough in the Wonder Bread Factory? These hands were only allowed to sweep the floors and work the line and load the trucks because the bosses said white people would not want to eat bread touched by these hands. And that's sad. Very, very sad. Well, these hands joined with other hands, and we wrote our petitions. A petition is like a strong request that you make on paper, and you get other people to sign it too, and then you give it to the authorities to change laws and rules and things like that. So they signed petitions, and we carried signs. And we raised our voices together. Now any hands can mix the bread dough, no matter their color. Now any hands can touch the bread dough, no matter their color. Yes, they can. I'm glad. Look at these hands, Grandpa. These hands used to not be able to tie a shoe. Or play the piano. Or shuffle the cards. Or hit the ball. Now I can do all that, plus bake a fine loaf of bread, can't I? I baked a loaf of bread today, but this one looks better. Why, yes, you can, Joseph. Look at those hands. Those hands can do anything. Anything at all in this whole wide world. Yes, you can. So if you don't want to hear the rest of this, this is the author's note about the influences that caused him to write this book. Not so long ago, during the 1950s and early 1960s, the African American workers at the Wonder Bread, Auri, and Tasty Bakery factories were allowed to sweep the floors, load the trucks, and fix the machines. But they were not allowed to work as bread dough mixers or bread dough handlers. I learned this history from Joe Barnett, an old friend and leader of one of the bakery labor unions, which are the groups of workers that join together to fight for fair treatment at their jobs. Joe told me the story one evening as we were driving to the Detroit Piston basketball game, and I can still picture his hands gesturing and trembling and crisscrossing while seeing with the glow of the headlights. My husband, who is a labor union attorney, has also heard bakery union members talk many times over the years about these unwritten rules for African American workers. A lot of what we know about how people were treated in the past comes through the retelling stories like Joe's or oral history. Fellow Michigan author Jean Alicia Elster remembers her mother telling her that African American women were not allowed to try on the hats in Hudson's department store. The father of the first African American governor of New York, David Patterson, remembers being paid by the people he worked for to not attend holiday parties in the 1940s. This history is shocking today to many people, but back then it wasn't news. It was just how things were done. In fact, newspaper ads for jobs back then often mentioned white only or no colored. Deciding what jobs people could do based on their skin color was not against the law until the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964. Before then, people may have thought such behavior was wrong, but they couldn't force other people to change. One day in 2006, a few years after Joe died, I was watching my daughter play the violin and thinking about her hands. I thought of Joe's hands and also of his heart, and I wrote down this story. And I'm so glad he did. I think even though it's a very sad story and it can make us angry and have lots of different feelings, it's good to remember that things like this happened in the past, and we want to make sure that people are treated equally and fairly today. And you can do that too. You can do that when you're at school or just at the park or wherever you're at. You can make sure that you see that people are being treated fairly too and that you treat people fairly.